computer. All right. Great to have you guys. And yeah, sometimes it will be like this. I visited a class one time to observe, and I thought the teacher was a great teacher. That's why I wanted to see him. And I got to his class, and as soon as his students got in the door, he's like, "All right, you get to work. All of you, you need to start this thing." And they actually were publishing every year they published a book on how to write. It's called Write Like the Pros or something like that. So sometimes we just are just going to be all about business. So we're going to have our slideshow, and let me slow down. All right, analyze, interpret, week 10, session 2. Quick welcome. And all right, we're going to jump right in. Today, we're going to focus on pre-writing and review of writing assignment. So today, you'll be able to practice interpreting poetry to enhance your analytical writing skills, analyze Richard Corey to understand authorial intent and societal commentary. So there'll be 2 layers of meaning that we're going to look at. And this is how to go deeper with the poem. We can think about what the poem means. We can ask questions about the characters in the poem. And we can delve deeper by asking what the author intended. What's the larger message here? And to do that, oftentimes you have to step outside of the poem and you have to ask yourself, not just what is being said. I wish I had my posters up because I had them in my classroom. 4 posters. And you can think of it like this. We're going to read a poem 4 times. Not necessarily right here, but typically this is a nice way to think of this. What does a poem say? That's one reading. What does a poem not say? It's a second reading. How does the poem say it? What kind of language? How's the what's the metrical structure? What's the rhythm? What imagery is being used? All those things. Why did he use this word, not that word? Finally, what does it mean? And I submit to you that a good way to be a great analytical writer is to be a great analytical reader and working less hard, but more sweeps through um, repetition of reading with a different purpose in each of the readings. And I just shared 4 of them with you. All right. So we're going to analyze Richard Corey by Edwin Arlington Robinson and Access Graphic Organizer for a quick write in each box. So let me show you the box we're going to work with. And if you, I'll let you go to Google Classroom actually, if you want to get it. It actually looks like this. Under Wednesday, it'll say Graphic Organizer for sessions 1 and 2. And each of you have your own copy, so that way it's yours. Okay, so I've got mine up, and I'll show you what it looks like from my perspective as a student. So there's that one. I think we're going to work with this one here. So you're going to be doing a form of informal writing today, or note taking if you want to think of it that way. Glorified note taking, but interpretation after first reading, interpretation after second reading, interpretation after class discussion, questions and discussion. Actually, we're going to work with the nursery rhyme, but I'm going to be giving you some information on this nursery rhyme. So it's going to be interesting to see what you come up with after each of these readings. Okay. All right, exploring Jack and Jill. And what just happened there? Okay, I guess we'll look at Richard Corey. Seems like a lot. Okay. Yeah, I don't. I think this is a little bit confusing, even as I look at it. So Um, yeah, let's start with Richard Corey, and I think we'll end up with Jack and Jill because I don't know if we'll have time for the surrender, which is the poem or the painting that you looked at um, before. So let me go to my other document, which is our workspace here. All right, here we are. Okay, so Jack and Jill. So what we're going to ask you to do is kind of give us an interpretation. Just what there's not really a right or wrong answer. Actually, I'm going to go to the I'm going to go to the website here to pick it up because I think that's going to be where it is. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to get the right one here. Raise your hand if or a thumbs up if you ever heard of Jack and Jill. Okay. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Got Jack, and home did trot, as fast as he could caper. He went to bed and bound his head with vinegar and brown paper. All right. So let's go ahead and write. And so if you want me to model this for you, basically, okay, let's do this. What did you notice in a first draft reading of the poem? And I would say, let me get this up. I'm going to try to simplify here so I can see things in one window. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's look at this poem. Nursery rhyme. Check out up the hill, fetch a pail of water. Um, I noticed that Jack was trying to fetch water, which is something that sounds. Oh, painting. No, this is not right. Okay. Sorry about that. Wrong place. Should be down here. There we go. All right. Which sounds very necessary. Perhaps he's feeding or um, refreshing cow or his family with water. Okay. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, but I want to be kind of tied to what's there as much as possible. So go ahead and do that. Take a minute for that. Couple minutes. The best way to do this, actually, I guess I kind of cheated. What I probably should have done is um, not looked at the poem the second time, just kind of whatever I can, whatever sticks with me. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Excuse me. Okay. Thumbs up if you have something written. Okay. Still working, Adi?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't worry about going too deep or too profound. Um, of course, there's that word interpret. So I do realize it does take a little bit of thought. So I think I've done that. Um, I feel like there's some important mission he's on. Perhaps the mission is bigger than Jack and Jill. Why else would he try to get better so intently? All right. Thumbs up if we're ready for a second read through. Yes? Okay, great. All right. So important, super important to read uh, out loud as much as possible, especially poetry. So would someone like to read this for us to volunteer? Mhm. All right, I'll do it. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Wait a minute though. Give me a second. I'm going to see here. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not really going to give you a lot of direction on that, other than what else do you notice, right? Maybe you can take your interpretation deeper. Here's what I'd encourage you to do. Whenever you do this and you're making successive interpretations, you want to read what you wrote before and you want to try to build upon that. Or you can also, if you want, you can deviate from that and you can just go in a different direction, like take a different part of the poem, perhaps that you didn't notice before. Perhaps there's a word that you really want to focus on, right? But try to provide a little bit of evidence there. So try to make it very text based, right? So words, phrases, um, try not to read too much into it. So, in other words, you're kind of taking in the whole. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Up got Jack, and home did trot. As fast as he could caper, he went to bed and bound his head with vinegar and brown paper. So go ahead and make your interpretation in writing. Oh, sorry. I have to read what I wrote already also. I noticed that Jack was trying to fetch water, which is something that sounds very necessary. Perhaps he's refreshing a cow or his family with water. I noticed he bound his head in paper. I think perhaps the mission is bigger than Jack and Jill. What else would he try? Why else would he try to get better so intently? Okay. All right. what I see here with the word, with the description, Jack is perhaps this. All right, try to finish up. Jill. All right, at this point, we'll take another minute if you want. We don't really have to go through and cover all the material. I think less is more here. But I think the next thing we should do is have you guys share. But what I'd like you to do is actually read exactly what you wrote, um, word by word. Um, don't try to explain what you wrote, but just let us go with whatever you wrote, if that makes sense. So what I see here is the description of Jack going to bed. With the description of Jack going to bed is evidence that he is dedicated, and perhaps this is shown in the poem by the time of day. Is a farm boy hard at work or a good boy helping his parents? Not sure what vinegar is. I should have mentioned um, went to bed, obviously. Well, what am I doing? I'm breaking my own rule. Like, I should stop that. Okay, sorry. Not sure what vinegar is. Jill seems to be on the same mission, but not hurt as badly. She does not break her crown, but does come tumbling. Is this by choice? All right. So let's go alphabetically. Adi, what would you like to read both of what you wrote, maybe one part of what you wrote?
Okay, so my first one is Jack seems to be a royal member since Jack is a royal member since he has a crown. He is also very clumsy since he knocked his sister as well. He must not be a very good doctor since he is wrapping his head in vinegar, which does not sound smart. And my second one is might be a poor family since they have to fetch water from far away. Also, he wraps his head in very rudimentary items, showing the lack of expensive medical care. And I thought there seems to be a gender hierarchy in this short story since both genders get hurt, yet only Jack is talked about.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that could reflect the time, right, in which it was written. But also it could also speak to the fact that and I don't know if you read part of what was here. Hopefully you didn't read what was on the
No,
page.
I
I did
didn't.
a sloppy job of that. But perhaps you know your allusion to the fact that he's perhaps a king and she's a queen, and so kings tended to be have more authority than queens, right? Although that's interesting question because now it makes me wonder if queens perhaps in certain cases have more authority than kings. Like if you think about Queen Elizabeth II, she's the monarch, right? She's the not King Philip. Okay. So okay, and then Archie, what did you have?
So I wrote, he broke his crown, which could be in reference to a historical event, possibly with a royal figure. He also
Okay.
runs very quickly back home, which suggests that he may be embarrassed of what occurred to him.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Do you feel like there's more there to that embarrassment? Is that coming from your historical knowledge or just putting together two and two from him being a king and having subjects and kings like to look,
Well, I
like
feel
they've
like I feel like I kind of read somewhere that it was in reference to that, but I don't exactly remember it. So that's what I'm
oh,
thinking.
no, I love that. I really love that. This is exciting stuff actually. Um, because what you're going to see here is I'm going to provide that historical information. And let's see. And again, my slides are a bit scattered. I just went and did this really quickly. Okay. Okay. So the nursery rhymes connections to King Louis the 16th and Queen Marie Antoinette, as well as its potential social commentary. Um, well, we'll just go to the website. We'll pick that up right there. Okay, so this is actually in the slides. Weird. Okay. The roots of the story or poem of Jack and Jill are in France. Jack and Jill, referred to, are said to be King Louis the 16th. Jack, who was beheaded, lost his crown, followed by his queen, Marie Antoinette. Jill, who came tumbling after, right? So now you can see um,
I never
where
thought
that
of it
comes.
that way. I've actually heard this like many times, but that's a different take on it.
Say that again.
I was just saying, like, I've heard this story so many times, but like, that's like a different take on it. I've never heard that
Okay.
one. And it actually makes sense too.
Yeah. It also almost makes me want to go back to the history part and read about that story. The words and lyrics to the Jack and Jill poem were made more acceptable as a story for children by providing a happy ending. Um, so that's interesting as well. The actual beheadings occurred in during the Reign of Terror in 1793. The first publication date for the lyrics of Jack and Jill rhyme is 1795. So you see that historical time, um, which ties in with the history and origins. The Jack and Jill poem is also known as Jack and Gill. The misspelling of Gill is not uncommon in nursery rhymes as they are usually passed from generation to generation by word of mouth. So the oral story tradition is what they're referring to. Now, what you're going to do is go ahead and read this information to yourself and feel free to make any notes. Or what I would rather do, maybe, um, I like not taking too many notes, but glancing at this and then glancing away from it and then going to that third column and then make your interpretation based upon what you now know. So read through it. Maybe there's some information you want to focus on. Maybe there's one thread. Here's what I encourage you to do. Your power as a writer, I'll keep saying this because you've heard me say it like 15 times. Uh, the more specific and minute you can be with something, the better. Um, and what I don't mean is just selecting something at random to talk about. Well, I'm going to focus on, um, let's see, the misspelling of Gil and Jill, and it's a oral story tradition, because that may not be really speaking to the poem at large. Um, and it's kind of like a minor detail, if you will, although you may be able to research that a little bit and to say something more about this poem. Perhaps there's a lot there, right? Um, but what I would say is um, perhaps follow up on something that you originally wrote in your first or second column, and then try to follow that thread through. All right, so enough said there. So let's take about 3 or 4 minutes total between reading and interpreting. So you can budget the time however you want. And I would say that at 8:04, we'll regroup and we'll read and discuss. Oh, one last interruption. You're going to notice on the graphic organizer, and it's not even there. Let's see, it's below. If it helps you, you can have a reflection, just a larger reflection, and it can answer the question, what does this poem mean? What does this nursery rhyme mean in general? Okay, so all right, so there we are. 5 minutes. How are we doing? Do we need more time? No? Are we good? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Archie, do you need more time? I don't know if she's frozen. Yeah, I think her computer screen might be frozen. Okay. Yeah, she might not be able to respond. She could be hearing us. So you want to go ahead and read what you wrote?
Okay. The kids in the story represent the monarchy tumbling in the French Revolution. Power is used as a symbol of no. Water is used as a symbol of power, and the male and female characters are representing the characters in the royal monarchy.
Okay. Um, great. Now, what do you think this is trying to say about the king and queen? Let me read what I wrote here. So kings and queens are either heroes or and heroines, or they are victims or villains. The reign of terror seems like a war of kingdoms. In the Bible, I remember reading about one kingdom taking over another, and the king and queen are always the first to be killed. Jack was the crown. It was not something he wore, but something he had to be. So if you lose the crown, basically, because we know that King um, Louis the 16th lost his life. So to me, the crown represents its symbolism for the kingdom and the king, of course. Um, so I think what I want to say here, and when we interpret, we want to say it's almost no different than writing a thesis. Um, I hopefully will say something that is not too obvious from what's there. Okay. So, all right, let's look at this and what I want us to do, I'm trying to figure out what was this other poem. So there was Darkness. Darkness is not the poem we want to do because it's very long and I changed it at the last minute. The Surrender was just basically a painting. So I think we have about 22 minutes left. And so we would have about 14 minutes for the next part. But what I think would be even more helpful would be to read through the writing assignment and start to get our minds around that. Um, Now, what I also did is I made sure that I updated the writing assignment so that if you wanted to, you could interpret this nursery rhyme or you could pick in any other poem out there. And there are even some that I could suggest if you're not sure. Because I had a student that when I did this last year in my regular class, she of all things, she was really good at doing videos and she did documentaries. But what she actually chose to do as a 12th grader was to analyze a poem. And she said that for the first time, she really enjoys poetry because she always hated it for. And so perhaps this assignment can be a way for you to not only sharpen your analytical skills, but to really get your mind around poetry. And so I'm going to suggest the way to do that, and I'll show you. There are some tools that I've created, and one of them is going to be the literary terms. Because when we're reading poetry, um, poetry very often will use figurative language. And so in your Google Classroom, you're going to see here the right method literary terms. And I don't know why they're grayed out like this, but basically, the Lion King movie is helpful for us if we're going to, if we're any of these terms are unfamiliar. But what I would do is point your attention to um, figurative language. You could certainly look at tone if you want to write this down. Number 20 is a good one. 21 might be something to look at. 27, obviously, but I think you probably will understand these and not really need to go through these that much. However, I would point out that poetry really uses figurative language. So really get to know that section there. And you can also talk about the narrator if you want to bring the narrator in. Sometimes you can talk about what the narrator is doing. All right, anything else?
I think our
Connotation,
tutor had to leave.
what's that?
I think
What's that?
I think their computer is freezing, and so they had to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what happened was she's got a bad signal. So I think because she's not trying to get back in, or she's trying to get back in, but I don't see any. Let me see. I'm going to take a look here. Yeah, I don't have an alert because usually and somebody's trying to get in, I will receive a little alert. Okay, but it's going to be okay because she's going to be able to look at the the replay. Um, Now connotation 39 and 40 are very important because in poetry, what happens is now you don't really see it with Jack and Jill, but the thing that makes and what's your experience with poetry, by the way?
Not much.
Positive, negative, somewhere in the middle,
Oh,
sometimes
it's somewhere in the middle.
okay. Um, there I there are a lot of things I can teach you about poetry that will make you enjoy it and appreciate it more. But one of the things is you already mentioned reading out loud, but also looking at the denotative meanings. So taking specific words, and even though you may know them already, go to a dictionary and look at that. Okay, home. What was a home? What's the definition of a home? Well, I know what that is already. Um, but why might the author be using that word denotatively? What poets like to do is they like to use words that are both denotative and connotative at the same time. They're very loaded. Um, Oftentimes you can read and this is with good poets, you can read a poem, it'll say one thing on one level, and if you read it on a different level, it'll say something completely different, almost contradictory to what it was saying on a literal level. And this can work wonders for us when we're trying to be analytical. So get to know that section there. Literal, obviously, alliteration. So I would say 39, 40, 41. You can just write down the numbers here 42, 43. Alliteration uh, is important. What words are used. They have the same sound. Um, there are a few others as well, but I would just start there and just glance at these. All right, we're going to take a look now at the writing assignment. And by the way, Israel had to go to a meeting with his first football, so that's why he's not here. Um,
Uh,
their updated writing assignment is here. Um, have you been able to go through this, look at it, glance at it?
not really.
Okay, so analyze, interpret, writing assignment. This is going to be due November 22nd. All right. So objectives, choose one of the prompts below to analyze, interpret behaviors, themes, or messages. Your writing should reflect a deep understanding of the underlying factors influencing the topic. Overview of the writing assignment. So let me say this first. Um, to be able to write analytical writing, response to literature. Um, you have to understand that the kind of question you ask. So the teacher is going to ask a question up here. They're going to give you a prompt or an assignment, but you're going to have to find your own thesis and find your own question. And the type of question you ask is going to determine what kind of information you actually find in that poem. So if I ask you to go to Disney, have you been to Disney World, Disneyland?
Oh, sorry, what?
Have you been to an amusement park?
Mm, yeah.
Right. So if I were to ask you to write all about the food at the amusement park, and you only had 3 hours and you had to go to every type of food, you had to go to the street vendors, you had to go to the little restaurants, and you had to focus on food, right? That would be one type of way of focusing. On the other hand, if I had you looking at merchandise or things that you could buy, that would be one thing. Games would be another thing. Another way of looking at an amusement park would be the rides. So you get to select the kind of question you want to bear down on. And so if you ask a question like, what did the author mean here? Um, you're going to have to do research on the author, the time period. So you get the idea there. Um, on the other hand, with poetry, you can oftentimes focus just on the language and just on what's being there. Now, what you may or may not have learned is that there are different approaches to literature. Now, they don't always get used in high schools, but so there's the formalist approach to literature that only looks at the poem itself, the language, the words, the syllables. Um, you're not allowed to talk about what the author meant or what's the background. That's a no-no. Okay. There's a new historicism approach. There's a mark, so that deals with history and ways of looking at history. For example, the patriarchy, the matriarchy, um, um, a view of history that perhaps is overly um, colonial, right? There's colonial approach to literature. There's Marxist approach to literature, looking at power structures, right? So just be aware of that because that way you can pick one and focus on it. All right. And so here, these are the choices here. Choice board. So number one is behavior analysis. Why do seniors behave the way they do? This assignment requires you to analyze the behavior of high school seniors. Consider the various influences that shape their actions, such as social dynamics, academic pressure, and personal expectations. Explore how these factors manifest in day-to-day behaviors, including their interactions with peers and teachers, and how they may be preparing for life after graduation. Okay. Now, what you're going to find here, and we're not going to go through all of these, but we're going to go through the first one here. I've given you some journal tips here. So here, these are basically some exercises to prepare you for this. Um, literary analysis. I don't know why that's there. I think that's a mix-up right there. Um, look at thesis requirements. So your thesis should clearly state your perspective on the main influences behind senior behavior. So is it getting through high school? Is it adulting, becoming adults? Is it something else, right? Is it competition? Neighborhood dynamics. Why does my neighbor behave that way? So investigate the behaviors of a specific neighbor. So now you get to be a stalker, right, with your binoculars. Um, begin by observing their interactions and routines. Consider how personal experiences, community norms, and socioeconomic factors influence their behavior. Analyze specific instances that illustrate their character and offer insights into how these behaviors may reflect larger social themes. Okay. So here's some exercises here. Field notes, document specific interactions with your neighbor, what patterns you observe, community research. So you get the idea here. And there are some thinking maps for each of these below. Number three, sports fan culture. Why do Yankees fans behave the way they do? Now you can substitute Dodgers fans or maybe Boston. Is it Red Sox?
Yep.
Okay. In this piece, analyze the culture of Yankees fans. Attend a game or engage with a local fan group to observe and record behaviors. Reflect on the emotions tied to sports fandom and how they can lead to both positive and negative behaviors. That is camaraderie versus hostility. Consider factors like team loyalty, the impact of community, identity, and the thrill of competition. Now, what you may want to do here is if there's a local restaurant and you know that, let's say, pizza place that is watching a game right now, no, there aren't any major league games other than the World Series, obviously. Um, you may, this weekend, uh, go to a pizza place with your family and maybe, um, I don't know, interview a Yankees fan, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, I don't
So
know if I'll find any Yankees fans over here
yeah. Um,
in
so
Massachusetts.
you might, get on a forum if you're part of any Discord communities, or even in school, even with some of the teachers there or any of the adults that work in the school, kind of ask them, um, their experience here about that, um, being a Boston Red Sox fan and what that means to them. Um, Here's some ideas here. You can do a survey, you can do a media analysis, and then be sure that you have a thesis, and then the thinking map is listed below. So I put all the thinking maps together. Yes.
Oh no, I was just raising my like
What's that?
nothing. I didn't have a question.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Personal relationships. Why does my girlfriend, boyfriend, best friend behave that way? Analyze the behavior of someone close to you, be it a romantic partner or a best friend. Identify specific behaviors that puzzle you or pique your interest. Consider how past experiences, societal expectations, and personal dynamics contribute to their actions. This assignment allows for deep personal reflection and requires you to balance subjective insights with objective analysis. Okay? I think that's a pretty fun one right there to do. Exercises are listed here. So there are some reflections, peer discussion, um, other things as well. All right. What I would say here is, and you may want to write this down. I noticed that with the theses here, one thing comes to mind, and that is why. So when you're asked to explain the reason for something, that's pretty much a why. And so you may, if I don't remember which ones are listed in the thinking map section, but a multi-flow map might be the best map for this, at least this portion, in developing that thesis. All right, let me see. This might be somebody. I just want to see if that might be Archie. Sometimes they communicate through Facebook. Okay, I'm gonna text her dad in a bit. Okay, the next one is a song interpretation. Now, everything I said about poetry usually applies to songs as well. Um, so analyze the lyrics of a song that resonates with you. Choose a song that has significant meaning to you and analyze its lyrics. Identify the key themes and messages, paying attention to how the artist conveys emotions and experiences through their words. Consider the cultural context of the song and its potential impact on listeners. Um, so there's a lyric breakdown, cultural context, personal connection. You might consider, for example, the age of the artist, what kind of generation they are. Are they Generation Z, Generation X? Are they a baby boomer? Are they there was a generation before the baby boomers. I don't remember Generation Y or something like that. So um, yeah, that might be that usually plays a big role in what's going on in the song and the themes. Songs like even jazz. The word jazz itself has its own origin. Rock and roll has a very adult origin to it, connotations. Swing, hip hop, those all have their own history. All right, number 6, writing assignment option, poetry analysis, Jack and Jill, or Richard Corey, or poem of your choice. Now, Richard Corey is going to be found in Google Classroom in the workspace, which we looked at today. Right, students analyze a poem of their choice, such as Richard Corey or by Edwin Arlington Robinson, The Nursery Rhyme, Jack and Jill, or any other poem that resonates with them. This option invites students to delve into the poem's themes, language, tone, and context. All right. Um, literal focus. Begin with a thorough reading of the chosen poem to establish a solid understanding of its literal meaning, including key events, characters, and imagery. So the 5 W's and H, right? Who, what, why, when, where, and how would be kind of like the focus of the first reading. I would definitely when it says annotate here, I would print it out. I would also have use a 3-column note page, just like we used earlier today, and that way you don't have to think about anything else. Now, if you may or may not choose to do the poem, um, but it's just a suggestion that I have. Okay, so now the interpretive focus. So here's a good example. On the literal focus, we might ask, or even interpretive, why did he take his own life? Because in this poem, he takes his own life. But if a deeper question, um, and really what I would suggest is, um, why does Corey take his, beyond that, what larger message is the author conveying through this? And that will allow you to use a lot of different kinds of evidence because oftentimes writers, let me shut this off. I'm on a group text and they're sending me messages. A lot of times the author, it, and this is the difference with fiction, right? They don't, a lot, and I can't even say most of it, but like this idea of what does this mean has to be decided by the reader. There is no right or wrong meaning necessarily. Yes, one is favored above another, of course. But when you put everything together, it means something different to everybody. And that's why songs mean something totally different to everybody else. And that's the way it should be. Like the person writing the song does not own the meaning. The meaning is owned by you. And in fact, you don't even own it completely because a year from now, when you read or listen to the same song, you might come away with a different meaning altogether. So meaning is pretty subjective. And but what's good about this is now that it forces us to be good scavenger hunters of evidence from the text. All right, enough said there. Um, there are some exercises. I won't get into all that. And then the thesis requirement, I made that especially specific there. All right, just give me one more minute here. So here are the requirements for each piece. It's nothing new. And here are the thinking maps for each of these choices, and you're going to see that there's usually at least two. And I'm curious to look at one of these behavior analysis one. Yeah. So again, with number one, you could do a multi-flow map because that um, answers the question why, cause and effect. And then, of course, um, there's a lot to do with poetry that you can focus on. You don't have to do all four of these, but perhaps one of these four thinking maps will help you to really get to know this poem. And, have fun with your thinking map. Pick the one that you like. Um, Now, I apologize ahead of time because I haven't really taught you what a bridge map is. But a bridge map basically is an analogy. Um, so if I say to my wife, what honey is to a bee, you are to me. So she's the honey, I'm the bee, right? So what's the relationship between honey and bee? Bees need honey, right? This they I think they don't they have a role in creating honey? Because there's a cross pollination. I think they pollinate the hive or something, if I remember correctly, right? So I am drawn to the honey, but I also help make the honey, right? So it's an interdependent relationship, perhaps. Um, and so husband and wife, interdependent relationship. So when you make analogies, um, she is to me what fire is to gold. So what's the relationship between fire and gold? Well, fire helps refine gold and purge the impurities, right? And so she makes me better, right? Okay, so you get the idea. That's what a bridge map is. You could actually look it up online, and then here's a writing checklist, just week by week, some things that we'll be focusing on. You don't really need to go through this in detail because I'm going to keep you guys on track, so it's almost unnecessary. Just some general tips on homework. There's the rubric, and I think that's it. All right, so questions, and I'm still going to give you guys feedback on your final draft. Um, it's been I've had a crazy schedule, so I'm just playing catch up with everything in my life right now. So, all right, Adi, any questions? Okay.
Not really.
Any takeaways? Anything you learned?
Yeah, like the poem stuff was pretty interesting. Really about Jack and Jill.
Good work. All right, we'll see you next time, Senor. We'll have the office hour as usual on Friday. And so if you're going to be there, I'll be there, of course. So
I'll
take
try. I
care.
think I'm getting my braces off on Friday. So I don't know if I'll be able to make it. I think it's in the morning though, so I'll try and make it though.